All you have to do is look at a chart of gold, and it goes to 24 hours after those Russian reserves were confiscated, or whatever word you want to use. Once Russia was stripped of those assets, those treasuries, the following day, gold started moving higher. So I think we were between 2,000 and 2,200, something like that. May have been even lower. I have to go back and look at a chart. But from that day forward, the chart of gold is the same chart as a bulldozer in first gear. It just relentlessly has gone higher and higher, and the reason being, as you said, other nations, obviously not just Russia, but the rest of the world looked at it and said, hey, if they can do it to Russia, they certainly can do it to us. And that was the world protecting itself, moving reserves out of treasuries and into gold. Obviously, there was a financial reset in 1944, Bretton Woods, another reset in 1971 when we went off the gold standard. I guess, and this is the way, when I talk to people regarding the current situation, my first question is the U.S. government bankrupt? Are they broke? And 95% of the people will say, well, of course they are, but it doesn't matter. And then my next question would be, who is the issuer of the world's reserve currency? It's the same entity. Mm-hmm. So you have a financial world that's running on top of a foundation of paper treasuries that are issued by a bankrupt entity. So the absolute need for a financial reset is in place, and there would be no BRICS if that was not the case. Mm-hmm. So the world is, more than half the world now has begun the process of moving away from dollars, moving away from U.S. treasuries as the foundation for the world's financial system. There's your reset right there. The world is resetting away from the United States.
Recent geopolitical tensions, such as the freezing of Russian reserves, have catalyzed a global reallocation of financial confidence. Gold prices surged immediately following those events as nations sought assets beyond U.S. treasuries. This shift marks a broader trend, the diversification away from reliance on U.S. dollar-denominated instruments. Governments and central banks are incrementally building alternative monetary strategies, including gold holdings, to shield themselves from potential political or financial disruptions.
All you have to do is look at a chart of gold, and it goes to 24 hours after those Russian reserves were confiscated, or whatever word you want to use. Once Russia was stripped of those assets, those treasuries, the following day, gold started moving higher. So I think we were between 2,000 and 2,200, something like that. May have been even lower. I have to go back and look at a chart. But from that day forward, the chart of gold is the same chart as a bulldozer in first gear. It just relentlessly has gone higher and higher, and the reason being, as you said, other nations, obviously not just Russia, but the rest of the world looked at it and said, hey, if they can do it to Russia, they certainly can do it to us. And that was the world protecting itself, moving reserves out of treasuries and into gold.
Debate persists over when the U.S.'s gold holdings were last transparently verified. While the U.S. Treasury asserts annual audits occur, critics point out that the last full public audit occurred in 1953, with limited internal checks in years since. Internal efforts in the 1970s and 1980s were often criticized as lacking in transparency. In response, the Gold Reserve Transparency Act of 2025 has been introduced demanding regular, independent, and fully public audits, aiming to restore public confidence in these reserves.
Jim termed it management of prospective economics. And basically what he was talking about was the numbers that we get from BLS are completely bogus, whether it be the inflation numbers, the growth numbers, the unemployment numbers. The numbers were bogus. And I guess if you think about it, the danger of telling a lie is that then you have to tell another lie.
Right.
And you have to tell, and each lie that you have to tell going forward to cover past lies has got to become bigger and bigger. And now we're to the point where people can see with their own eyes that things are not as they're being portrayed by the administration or by mainstream media. And one other thing that Jim had talked about was GOTS, get out of the system. And
right.
That functionally is the most important thought process of all. You've got to get your assets out of the system. You and I have talked about it. I've talked on many interviews. I've put articles up. I've written articles. And of course, David Rogers Webb is the guy who wrote and put together The Great Taking. And I've posted that on my website probably half dozen times at least. And I assure you that what the man has written, what he's spoken about, is absolutely 100% spot on. All of those laws are on the books all over the world. And they started doing that in 2014. What they're getting ready for is pulling the rug out from underneath the market, out from underneath the economy. And when you have brokers, banks, and insurance companies failing, the assets that you believe are your assets you are a named beneficiary. It's for your benefit. However, the actual owner, when push comes to shove, is your broker, is your bank, is your insurance company. And when they get blown up, when derivatives collapse, you will lose everything. So while MOPE was a great call by Jim, the best call was GOTS, get out of the system.
On the books, the U.S. Treasury values its gold holdings at a mere $42 per ounce, a legacy valuation from the 1970s. Yet at current market prices, $2,800 to $3,000 ounce, the reserves are worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Revaluing gold could unlock a $750+ billion credit boost to the Treasury general account, offering short-term fiscal leverage. However, analysts caution this would merely shift liabilities, not eliminate them, and could undermine long-term debt discipline.
Over 5,000 years, and you could look at just the last 25 years. What has been the best asset to have owned in this century? It's gold. Gold has outperformed everything. Be clear, there's going to be more than one reset. We've thought that the first reset would be man-made. That would fail, and there would be ultimately a reset priced in by Mother Nature. In other words, assets will find parity values versus other assets in a free, unfettered market that's not priced with derivatives. We may have more than one man-made reset. The first reset, what are they talking about now? They're talking about doing stablecoin. And that's basically, it's another smoke and mirrors way to hold up the Treasury market is what they're doing. Well, Dave, what you just illustrated is nothing changed.
No.
You're replacing something that nobody wants with something that is backed by something that nobody wants. Nothing changes.
At least with the petrodollar, that was something hard involved. Oil, right?
Right, and that was real. That was demand based on an asset that was actually used on a daily basis all over the world. It was. You've got to. If you look back, that was brilliant.
Which is why it lasted 50-some years.
Well, yes and no. The real reason it lasted 50-something years was the U.S. military.
Yeah.
Because think about it. You could have been Muammar Gaddafi. You could have been Saddam Hussein and talked about, we don't want to use dollars, we want a gold backed or, some type of real currency, and you get your ass blown up.
Yeah.
So fear of the US military has been a very, very large component of the dollar retaining its reserve currency status.
While gold revaluation appears tempting as a quick fix, experts argue it doesn't reduce consolidated government debt. It merely reshuffles it across the Fed and Treasury balance sheets. The mechanics resemble a form of QE tied to gold, potentially easing financing pressure, yet not resolving structural deficits. Some analysts dismiss such schemes as pure demagoguery, cautioning they risk misrepresenting fiscal realities while politicizing monetary policy.
Dave, have you ever seen cattle herded or sheep herded into a chute?
Mm-hmm.
The other end of the chute is the slaughterhouse.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's what's being done is okay, so you don't like the dollar, here's the way out. But no, it's the way out of money, out of value. You already have an example of that. Look what happened in Weimar Germany.
Right.
In Weimar Germany, when the currency went away, what did they do? The banks rewrote all of the debt in grams of gold.
Yeah.
So either you had gold or you weren't able to pay your debt. And if you couldn't pay your debt, you were out of business. The debt does not go away. The banks are not going to be turned upside down and bankrupted because the debt is worthless. They will do anything and everything to try to keep the banks whole. Now, one thing we've not talked about, and we probably should, is the talk of resetting the price of gold higher in order to basically create more liquidity.
The U.S. gold debate now sits at a crossroads. Will new legislation lead to meaningful audit and valuation reform, or will gold remain a political talking point? Transparency advocates hope the 2025 audit bill will deliver verifiable clarity around gold holdings. Meanwhile, policymakers exploring revaluation schemes must weigh short-term liquidity against long-term credibility. Whether this becomes a genuine reset or an economic illusion remains to be seen. The world watches to see whether gold becomes an anchor or merely another illusionary backstop.
All right, if you look at the gold that the U.S. Says that we have and has not been audited since 1956, but let's assume that it is all there, it is all unencumbered, and it is all owned by the Treasury. That's 262 million ounces is the total in West Point, Fort Knox, etc. And that's priced on the books right now at $42 an ounce. So from a balance sheet aspect, it's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you revalue it to $3,400 gold, that's a bonanza, is what they're trying to tell us. It's a bonanza. Well, no, it's only $900 billion. What about the other $36 trillion that we owe?
Yeah.
Now, this goes back to something I talked about as far back. I started doing the math on this, I think, in 2014, 2015. Did the math 2 or 3 years ago, and every time I come up with a number, the comments section, people go nuts that, Holter's an idiot, he's retarded, doesn't know what he's talking about. But the number comes up to $125,000 an ounce. That's what's required, just north of $125,000 an ounce in order to cover the debt. And whether they go to that extreme or not, I don't know. I'm not inside. But I can tell you, if you own gold, you are going to have an official, call it a tailwind, because governments all over the world are wanting to revalue gold higher in order to create more liquidity and ease the debt situation. But understand, for years and years, forever up until now, the U.S. Treasury / Federal Reserve never wanted the price of gold to go higher because it's a direct competitor with the U.S. dollar. And if you look, just go back, 5 or 6 years, gold was $1,300 in 2019. it's more than doubled. And the price of gold more than doubling tells you that the value, the purchasing power of your dollar has dropped more than 50% in 6 years.